I'm Jacob Maynard. I'm a senior at Grace Covenant. I recognize some of you guys. Many times in my life, I've gone through changes in friendship, age, maturity, in life itself, and in faith. As a young child at church, I used to go work in the kitchen all the time with Gina Enzyme. And as you guys know, I love to quote her, but I can't really do that in church. You put a little too much salt in the gravy, and you're going to hear about it. I also attended Awakening Worship and Sunday school, but really, while I attended Sunday school and Awakening Worship, I enjoyed the kitchen more. And church to me when I was younger was the kitchen and not a whole lot more. Didn't really understand the purpose and the reason of being here besides the kitchen. Then I entered middle school and confirmation, did the mission trips and youth group and all those such things. And then as I entered the confirmation in 8th grade, that's when I really started to realize like what church truly is and what the meaning of it does for us. And then as my family, we moved to Paola, where I'd always attended a school, and my attendance to church had dropped as the drive had increased to church, and getting here was a struggle. I entered high school, and once again, I attended the mission trips and did youth groups as much as I can. But to my sophomore year, my attendance had dropped. My change in focus became athletics and schoolwork that pulled me away and kept me away from church more than it should have. I started also questioning my true beliefs and what I learned in confirmation, if I still believed in that or not. Then all of a sudden, one big event changed it all for me. It was my senior football season that really pulled me back to church. Our team centered ourselves around playing for each other and believing in the man upstairs to guide us along our journey, praying before and after each game and after practices. The season goes on, and we were having a pretty good one. Then all of a sudden, one play changed everything for me. I went to take a cut back to make a tackle when a snap and pop occurred in my knee. Just like that, my ACL was torn, and my final season had been ended early. However, the event that changed it all for me was in the doctor's office. My mom and I sitting there, and the doctor tells us, "Well, you've torn your ACL and part of your meniscus, but that's not our main concern right now." And I thought to myself, what could be a bigger concern than that? Possibly be a bigger concern than that. That's when the doctor proceeded to tell me and my mom, or my mom and I, grammar correction there. Well, just above the knee, at the base of your femur, we have discovered a tumor. At that moment, my jaw dropped. I looked at my mom, who I could tell was trying not to tear up in fear for what it could be. Yes, I could tell. And that's when the doctor told us we will need to go have a bone scan done to determine more. I left that office scared to death, but I couldn't show that to anybody because I always try to stay positive and keep everything that way. I had the bone scan done, and the doctor calls back and said, "We still don't know what exactly this is. We need to have another MRI done with contrast this time." At the conclusion of that test, it was still undetermined, so I had to go see an oncologist at KU. That phone call, while I had already been scared, it heightened my fear as well. I can now see the fear not only in my mom's eyes, but my dad's as well. And if you know my dad, that doesn't happen very often. We go to the doctor, and finally the words, "This is a benign tumor," come out. Relief was sent through myself and everyone. The doctor said, just come back every 6 months to make sure it doesn't grow and develop into anything more serious. Finally, I get cleared for surgery and have my knee fixed, and now just have to go to the doctor twice a year for my femur. I tell you all of that because 4 months ago, I thought I was going to be in for the fight of my life. I had to pray through it all, and I turned to God, who earlier in life I'd gotten away from, and all of a sudden had to turn to him in a hard time to go through, and friends and family prayed for me as well. I believe that God helped me through it and was with me the whole way. This brought my faith back and really showed me how prayer and faith can truly help and guide someone through hard times. Change is something you can embrace or run from. Your faith will change many times throughout your life, but what is important is that you embrace those changes and follow your path.
Good morning. I'm Celia Cox. I hereby command you, be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Joshua 1, verse 9. I believe this scripture is one that has resonated with me more and more as I grew up at Grace Covenant. If I were to identify the way in which I've seen the most change up to this point in my life, I would say it is in my perspective. In the first chapter of Joshua, verse 9, we are told to be strong and courageous and to not be frightened or dismayed, all because God is with us wherever we go. This is one of many scriptures written in the Bible that is much easier said than done. With that said, life is made up of many challenges, and doing our best to follow God's word is always going to be one of them. Growing up is a challenge in itself. It is easy to be frightened or dismayed, not only because it's a time when you're really trying to discover who you are, but also because you're constantly facing the judgment of peers who are going through the same process, and you're under the pressure of others around you. All while your skin is bad and your hormones are crazy and you can't seem to convince everyone else that it's not just a phase. Even though these elements are more than enough to make a kid go insane, as Christians, we're also expected to attend Sunday school and church service on a weekly basis. I, like many others, followed this path through middle school. I saw my weekly visits to church as a requirement or what was expected of me. At this point in my life, I was defined. I did exactly what every other kid did. I felt like just another face in the congregation. Going through confirmation later in 8th grade, I became more in touch with my personal relationship with God and saw a lot of development in my faith. I began to see church less as somewhere I was forced to go and more as a place where I was able to serve Christ's community. As I progressed into high school, I felt less connected with the traditional high school activities like youth group and high school Sunday school, but I still had the desire to be an involved member of this church. Instead, I began assisting as a teacher for preschool, Sunday school, and Awakening to Worship. My love of children and affinity for education and creativity made this the perfect fit for me. Despite my involvement in the children's ministry, I was repeatedly told by other church members that I should go to high school Sunday school more often. However, at this point in my life, I understood that there was no correct way to worship God. I now knew that God's acceptance was universal. I knew that God accepted me no matter how I worshiped or what I looked like or who I loved, just like he accepts everyone else for who they are. I believe that I am an example of a person who can have a great desire to be involved in the church community and yet not have to do it in the most traditional way. I believe that my change in perspective has helped me to be strong and live courageously as God has commanded. With God's guidance, I now know that it is okay to be undefined and to do so unapologetically.
Just like the world around us changes, so do the words we pass through history. What was written down by the disciples in Hebrew thousands of years ago is not the words that we hear today. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew in a language called Aramaic. It is not Arabic. It doesn't exist anymore. But because of the time changes, the New Testament was written in Greek, because that's what everybody started speaking. Because of this change, the Old Testament was translated into Greek because nobody knew Hebrew anymore. It literally became an extinct language for a little bit. Nobody knew it. But as the years went passed on, the words of the Bible became more influential. Christianity, Jewish, it got out there. The Greek words were taken and translated into many other languages or throughout the world, from Greek to Latin to English. That was only one path it has taken. Today, the full Bible has been translated into 670 languages. I didn't know that many existed. The New Testament alone into 1,500 languages, and little Bible portions or stories into 1,100 other languages. This is unbelievable. And as many games I'm pretty sure everybody here has played, which is very contributory to the sermon, telephone. I'm pretty sure everybody here has played it. You line people up and you tell one person, you whisper in their ear a word or sentence. They have to whisper it to the next person all the way to the end of the line, and the last person will step out of the line and repeat what they were told. Then the first person will step out and say what they were told, and you'll compare and see if it's the same thing. Well, I'm positive everyone here has played this game, has one time or another gotten a completely different word. Whether it's because someone had a lisp or it was a long sentence and you just forgot it. But now if I took 6 people and I chose 5 languages, or languages that the Bible has been translated through in history, and I put them in a line going from English, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, Arabic, then back to English, I don't think I'm going to get the same word. Last night I put into Google Translate. Never trust Google, not a very good source. But I had no other choice. So I took the word change, which is the theme, and I put it into Google, and I go to the other side, and I click Hebrew. Well, I don't know how to pronounce any of these. I'm not even going to try. I kept re-putting them in the language orders I originally gave you guys, and I copied and pasted over and over again. But if you go to Google Translate and you put a word and you get in a different language, it's going to give you a down arrow. So I clicked down arrow. It gave me 10 different words. I have no idea what these languages are. I don't know how to speak them. I clicked a random one. It led me down a path. Well, if I chose a different word, it probably led me down a different path. But in the end, I put in change, went through all these changes. That's a lot. Nice, I like that. And in the end, I got the word revision. I really got to revise the sermon. Maybe it'll sound better afterwards. But it changed. It's not the same. Yeah. Well, as the words that we use, like Shakespeare time, the words that meant something to them are not the words that we use today. The words are completely different. I'm pretty sure everyone here has read Shakespeare in school, and it makes no sense. No sense at all. I'm surprised they passed. Well, that is the same thing as translating the Bible. Today, we do translate Hebrew directly into English, but because it was forgotten back then, like nobody spoke Hebrew, it was only Greek. The Old Testament wasn't really translated properly. Each language has their own set of words, like Google Translate. I chose a word, I went down one path. It could have been a different word. You never know. There are so many versions of the Bible, I really don't know which one is correct. But as the words that we use today and we write down for our children and pass down the line, English is going to keep on changing. More words are added to the dictionary, words are changed, words are given different meanings. I'm pretty sure everyone who has gone through confirmation has debated many of these words, and it has gotten to a very, very long hour debate, which still hasn't ended. But as we write down these words, they will change, and you never know if down the line what they think the meaning is will be the same meaning as we have now. And just keep on changing till the end of time, see if dinosaurs come back. All right.
I'm Rachel Grice, so yeah. Change. To me, this is an interesting concept. The reason is because change is normal and something that happens in everyone's life. But it's up to the person whether they are going to embrace the change or not. Without change, it's nearly impossible to evolve and become better versions of ourselves. But I've also realized how hard it can be to let go and understand that change can be great. This year has been strange. And by strange, I mean that the atmosphere at school is a weird mix between friends who never want to leave each other's side and friends who feel like they need to get out of this town. Throughout senior year, I have come to realize that after I graduate, I may never see some of these people again. Thinking about that too much makes me sad, but in the back of my mind, I'm also super excited to meet new friends and create new memories. So, I'm off to college next year, and not only does that come with tons and tons of change, but it also requires me to it also requires me to become much more independent than I have a majority of my life. This can be exciting, but very intimidating. The nerves begin to pile up, and it's very helpful to know that what I'm feeling is not strange, but yet extremely normal. It can be hard sometimes when I know my life is changing, or it needs to change, but one thing I can say for sure is the relationships I've made here at GCPC have always been a constant in my life, and for that I am eternally grateful. Sometimes it's hard to understand everything, and when that happens, it is easy to get upset. But if there's one phrase that has gotten me through a lot, it is the phrase, let go and let God. For some reason, it provides me a lot of relaxation and reassurance that everything will be all right. As it says in Hebrews 13:8, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. So take this verse and know that although your life may change, do not fret, because you will forever be able to count on the Lord. So thank you to everyone at this church who has allowed me to develop such strong faith and encouraged me to embrace the change.
I'm Claire Chaffin, if you didn't know. Every single moment of our lives, we are making decisions. You've probably had to make dozens of decisions already this morning, from deciding what to wear to even what to have for breakfast. While making decisions is always and has always been a huge part of our lives, the way that we make decisions changes. You see, when we are children, the vast majority of our decisions are made for us. Most Sunday mornings during my childhood, the biggest decision of the day would be picking out what type of donut I was going to get from Heartland Hall. Now, as I've gotten older, the scope and scale of the decisions that I have had to make has changed, along with how I make those decisions. As high school seniors, we're making what might amount to be some of the biggest decisions of our lives. Those decisions range from what college we will attend, what we want to do with our careers, to even what we want to make of our lives in general. Now, and while these decisions won't necessarily seal our fates forever on any particular path, these are the types of choices that will have some sort of lasting impact on our lives. Now, as teenagers, we are given more and more responsibilities, and along with those responsibilities comes more and more considerations for when we do make decisions. When we are the ones who are making our own spending money, we have to start asking ourselves, can I actually afford to go to Chipotle for the third time this week? And when our grades now start to actually count for college considerations, we have to ask ourselves, should I actually do my homework right now? Now, you see, as we are transitioning to independent young adults, our decisions are based more on the long-term consequences rather than our in-the-moment impulses. One of the biggest considerations we have when making decisions as teenagers is others' perceptions of us. Unspoken parental expectations have long been served as a check on what we can and can't do. As teenagers, we often feel torn between having to make decisions that affect our adult lives while also still being treated like children. Now, this tension and stress that comes from being caught in the crossroads of our lives can take a considerable toll on teenagers. Now, I've personally seen the effect that it can have, both in my own life and in those around me. But it's important to remember that while these might seem like the most important years of our lives, we're only starting to experience just a tiny fraction of our lives, and the rest of it is just starting to stretch out in front of us. As you leave this service today, I urge you to consider all of your decisions that you're going to have to make, and to embrace them with an open mind. At the end of the day, I'm extremely grateful for this church community for always being there for me during all the changes and the decisions that I've had to make. Thank you.